So Roshan Tailor will be talking on behalf of the Macaw Society for work done in Costa Rica. Adelante, Roshan.
Okay, so as Don said, my name's Roshan. I'm field researcher with the Macaw Society. And the title of our study is Predicting Post-Release Fate Using Pre-Release Behaviors. And we've been working with the yellow-naped parrot in Costa Rica. They are critically endangered and they're threatened by the pet trade due to their remarkable ability to mimic vocalizations. And since 2022, we've been collaborating with Rescate Wildlife Rescue Center, who between 2019 and 2022 have received over 50 confiscated yellowknapes per year. Such numbers have the potential to overwhelm rescue centers, resulting in the need to rehabilitate and release these birds. And in this collaboration, one of our objectives has been to identify pre-release behavioral characteristics that can help us to predict fate post-release. And as you can see from figure 2, the parrots that we are releasing have been fitted with individual ID tags. The map here points out the location of the release site. We're based in a secondary tropical dry forest in the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica's North Pacific region. The site has 2 feeding stations with release cages situated approximately 2.5 to 3 kilometers from the nearest village. And on site, over 350 yellowknapes have been released since 2000. We carried out pre-release observations for an average of 23.9 hours per bird, where we recorded characteristics such as flight quality, proximity to observers, and if parrots went to the ground. We released 4... Oh. I think someone needs to be muted. We released 4 cohorts over 3 months, totaling 46 parrots, which were originally ex-pets confiscated by the government. Parrots were held in pre-release enclosures for between 4 and 14.5 months. Following a release, full-day monitoring was carried out for 4 days outside the release cages. And in our post-release monitoring, we monitored the feeding stations and registered resites of collared parrots spotted anywhere in the forest. And in the 3 months, we registered over 1,300 resites. So for our results, in figure 5 in the middle top, you can see the proportion of fates for the 46 parrots. And by 1 month, about a third were still being seen, about a third were not detected in the release site, and about a quarter were recaptured in town. And by 3 months, the proportion of parrots still sighted dropped to about 15%. In table 1 to the left, you can see the fate of the parrots based upon their flight quality. And whilst a strong flight ability is fundamental to success, a third of high and a third of medium quality flyers found their way to town and were recaptured from someone's property. Additionally, 0 low quality flyers were recaptured, but by 3 months, 60% were not detected and 20% were found either dead or sick. Figure 6 to the middle bottom shows the fates of the parrots that went to the ground versus those that did not. And you can see within the categories, there isn't much difference, suggesting it does not correlate well with post-release fate. And in table 2 to the right, we have the fates of the parrots that came in proximity to observers during pre-release observations. And about half of those that commonly approached observers ended up being recaptured in town, suggesting that their willingness to approach people pre-release is a good predictor of post-release fate. And you can even see from the photo in figure 7 that um, a parrot approached observers during a pre-release observation, highlighting that these ex-pets, they're not afraid of approaching humans. So 46 is a good sample size to be able to draw some conclusions, but it is not enough for statistical analyses. Flightability is pivotal to success, but many good flyers were recaptured. And given that many of the birds were ex-pets, they've demonstrated to us that they still have a strong attraction towards humans, which ultimately results in a lower post-release success. So there is a need to implement a human aversion techniques to reduce parrots from approaching humans. It's possible that some of the good flyers may have dispersed to areas outside the release site, but without a way to track them, we're unable to confirm this. Additionally, it will be useful to identify other behavioral characteristics that can assist in predicting post-release fate. And finally, if your projects are choosing to not release parrots based on characteristics such as going to the ground, it's very important to ensure that those decisions are based on characteristics that correlate with post-release fate. And so, yeah, to finish, I'd like to thank the funders and all our field assistants, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Roshan. Do we have any questions on this research? I don't see any in the chat yet. How old were the birds that were released, Roshan?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, we don't know
We
that.
had, yeah, I think some of the birds that we released, um, they they were in their 30s, or at least they were pets for 30 years. Um, and I think maybe some of the younger ones were at least over 2 years. I don't think we had anything that young.
Okay. Yeah, some of the times in this system we get birds that are young, but most of them are older birds for certain. And it's hard to know exact ages. Um,
Hmm.
question, Roshan, did you do any anti-predator training?
For those sets of releases, we did not do any anti-predator training. Um, as far as raptors here, we don't have any predators. Um, there are risks of the parrots getting predated inside nests, but as far as them having predators outside the nests, we don't really have any around our release site.
Did you have talking birds in this group?
Yes, we had a lot of talking birds in our group, and we did document vocalizations of the birds. If they said any words, if they made other human sounds, and if they made their natural parrot calls, we did document that. And we didn't really find any correlation that birds that made lots of human vocalizations, that those birds had lower success. We didn't find that. We didn't find a correlation. Um, but yes, we did have birds. We did release birds that spoke.
Okay, yes, for certain. Um, and the next question is, ¿El collar de marcación les causa problemas en la sobrevivencia? Is there problems with survival for collared birds? And I'll take that one. Um, we have not seen much of that. We did have a bird in a cage that may have had the collar get stuck and cause some problems. It wasn't on one of these birds. It was a different species. Roshan, do you have examples where you think the collar caused survival problems on our birds?
We have had a few birds kind of pluck the feathers around their neck, but um, not many not many of our birds showed that they showed a that showed that it had an impact on their survival.
Okay, agreed. Um, Martin Lasama says, thank you. It's important to look at these in Amazona arapauliata. It's because in captivity, it is very dependent on humans. So it's interesting to see what happens upon release. Darby has asked if we have future plans for human aversion training, what that might look like. And thanks for a great talk. I can talk on this one a bit. Yeah, Roshan and our crew, we certainly do have plans for that. What it might look like is a great question that we haven't addressed yet. And it actually is a question that might be nice to have a public discussion on with other members of the Parrot Release Network. So I'm actually considering hosting an event where we say, how should we do human aversion training and get a brainstorm of ideas. But more on that. And I don't even think Roshan's heard that idea yet. So, but that is certainly something that we're going to be thinking about. ¿Cuánto tiempo llevo que dejarán de hacer sonidos humanos? Wow. How long does it take them to stop making human sounds?
Great question.
That's a great question. I love that
And
question.
yeah, I've asked myself that quite a lot of times. I mean, so we've been able to catch some birds that were released prior to our arrival on the site, and um, I do wonder if those birds made more human vocalizations than they do now. Um,
Are we
for
taking
example,
data on birds that talk when we're seeing them in our resightings?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
we do document if they make words and humans. Um, I mean, in one particular bird that springs to mind, um, I've heard it say, I've heard it talk less and less over the last few months. But I don't really know
Okay. We
what that
should
kind of
have
means
data.
for
It's a
that bird.
great question, and we should have data to address that question because when they observe a bird, they'll write a summary of it, what they saw during that day, and that includes whether words were spoken. So we may actually see the degradation over time of the frequency in which they're speaking. So great question. Unfortunately, we may have the data to to address it. So okay. I think we're out of questions. And remember, you can unmute and ask questions as well. I don't need to be the only one speaking here. So